G'day champions, we're back with my favourite Mesa Boogie Mark III. The story goes on this one, the customer got a good price, whatever that means for a Mesa Boogie, on a Mark III head. So he sort of bought it regardless of it having issues. When we've taken it apart, it's become evident that it's been played with somewhat extensively. Many mods. None of them seem to make any sense. It's got another tech sticker on the back. However, there's no guarantee that that is the tech that carried out these mods. That's part of the reason I don't put stickers on the back of anything, because you don't know who's going to play with the amp from that point forward and not remove your sticker afterwards. So I don't want to be blamed for modifications that other people have done after the fact. So I won't be doxing that bloke. We'll just give him the benefit of the doubt and assume that it was done after he had serviced the thing. So we're going to try and analyse what they thought they were doing. Often that's a waste of time because you're tracing out just gobbledygook, stuff that doesn't make electronic sense to do. And we're going to show you in its current state what it sounds like, which is quite hilarious. It's probably one of the worst sounding amps I've ever heard. So no wonder he got a good price. And then we're going to, with the owner's permission, we're going to remove all the mods and basically return it to a stock Mark III. And then if the customer wants to refine it from there, we can do so. But we're going to start with a clean slate, as well as do the stuff that is due at this age, like recap and just general servicing and clean up of the typical Mesa dumb shit. Upgrade some of the caps, like the phase inverter coupling caps, which are very close, or actually underrated for voltage, which Mesa still do to this day. No idea why. They can't read data sheets, simple as that. So the issue with Mesa is, in the early days, even today to some extent, there's no continuity between their revisions. There's no revision tracking. There's none of the stuff that you get with a professional company. There's no revision control. The schematics are pathetic crayon drawings. I'm not sure if that's intentional, but I've got some pretty good connections. I've never seen some schematics or in any internal documents that look professional. Schematics do silly things like the signal runs from right to left to confuse people. The resolution of the schematics, and they're just pencil drawn schematics, is really bad, so you can't read values. There's no reference to the board designators, so R112, whatever, I won't say anything on the schematic, it'll just have like 10K. So you've got to try and reverse engineer with your eyes as you're looking at the circuit board, which can be difficult considering the density and the illogical layout of the circuit boards. Say, for example, you do find a failed component, it'll be underneath a capacitor, so you'll have to remove that capacitor in order to get to that resistor. This is why Mesa servicing costs 2 to 3 to 4 times more than servicing a professionally designed amplifier. So if you are a Mesa owner, just be prepared for that. If you do have a pretty basic repair, it's going to cost about 3 to 4 times more what a well-designed amp will cost to carry out that same repair. Now, I used to get upset about it because I don't like seeing my customers spend more money than they have to. But now it's pretty well documented. I've done my best to document it, despite a lot of backlash from people that know nothing about engineering. I've put lots of information out there, so have my colleagues, about these amplifiers. So you've had every chance to do due diligence. That's hard to say at 7 o'clock in the morning. If you love Mesas, carry on. Just know that they're going to cost a bit more to keep running. So I'll have a close look at the condition of the guts, and I'll show you all the weirdness, all just the shoddy workmanship. We'll try to reverse engineer some of the mods, figure out what they thought they were doing, and I'll also show you what it sounds like, and then we'll rip into it and get the cutters out, get them angry, get them warmed up, and have some fun doing the snippety doodah, which is always my favourite bit before you rebuild her up. Alright champions, so first thing you'll notice is wires going everywhere, not the stock setup. And the second thing you'll notice is another filter cap, Marshall style filter cap, just cable tied in silicon down in the corner. And the third thing you'll notice is an additional triode's been installed with a tag strip. Now the lead dress is indicative of the workmanship of the previous person that worked on this. It's one of those things that's pretty intuitive. If it looks messy, it's messy, and it's just a shit job. This stuff can get caught when you're sliding it in the chassis, and there's no telling where it's going to be. Now everything interacts in an amplifier. Everything capacitively couples to everything. So if you don't think carefully about your lead dress, you'll end up like it could have one effect if it's there, it could have another effect if it's there, it could have another effect if it's there. So not great. Now we've got date codes of 1989 for the caps, so we're going to replace them. Those two, we're going to get rid of this, get rid of all this haywire crap, and return it to stock. Now wherever they've used the coax, they've just used like that El Cheapo, discount store RCA stereo connector wire that they've just repurposed. So that's pretty lame. So at a glance I can tell they've changed the power scheme. So down here they've created another node hanging off these two pre-existing nodes. You can see there used to be a resistor across here as a dropper. They've sort of seriesed two resistors to go between these two paths, and they've cut a trace here and formed another node here, which goes off to power the preamp underneath here. I kind of don't know where to start with this. There's so much shit going on. You got tack soldered resistors flying up in midair. You got cut traces all over the place. You got wires going everywhere. You've got coax with its shield wire just shorting out on other stuff. So across the back it looks more or less stock, at least from the photos I could find online. The circuit looks pretty much factory. So that's a plus. It's got those horrible main selector switches, which in this case it's in pretty good nick, so I might leave that in, but I do like to disable them and just hardwire it to 240 volts. The mains connector has got this weird section of cable that they've cut, and then it grounds over here, which is not great. It should ground right next to the IEC, but it's all solid connections and all of that. You've got your fan connector down there, which is another funny little story, which I'll show you in a second. So they run the fan off the 110 or 120 volt tap. So even when you're plugged into 240 volts, it sort of uses the primary of the power transformer like an auto transformer and powers a 110 volt fan. And that's just like a US or like Japanese style socket mounted down there for the power for the fan. So I'll spin this thing around and I'll show you the horrors on the front panel. Alright, so starting from the power end, the switches have a bunch of goo on them from people just spraying random fluids into them. The EQ board looks pretty well untouched, including the original tantalum caps there, which I'm not a fan of. So the reverb control. They've tapped a signal. Okay, let's trace this. Let's trace this as best as we can. So you've got your reverb return. Comes in here. Goes through a gain stage. Comes out of the gain stage via that cap. Then goes into this coax. That disappears over to the additional triode. There's another gain stage. And then it comes back via the other side of this discount store hi-fi lead. Then it goes into the wiper of the reverb control, and then when you're turned maxed out, it comes through this wire and then goes into some stage over here. But what's happening? I've still got to trace it all out. I kind of don't want to, because I know none of it's going to make sense and it's just a waste of time. But whatever's happening there is introducing some ridiculous distortion and no reverb's taking place. So I think there might be a problem with the reverb drive as well, or where they're tapping it from is the wrong place. I've got to trace it all out, and as any tech knows, that's really fun with this forest of ridiculousness. So we've got lots of components just floating in midair, tack soldered, stuff just waiting to snap off. Got lots of areas where they've stripped back the shielded wire there and just had like a good half-inch or in some places like an inch of exposed wire, just waiting to short stuff out. Now these 3 pots down here, which are the EQ pots, appear to have been replaced at some point, and the wiring's just really messy. Again, you've got this braided shield that's just touching other leads. Now, some of that is factory from Mesa, so you know. But having unjacketed braid just floating around in a tube amp is the dumbest shit ever. I don't know why they ever did that, but I mean, look down there. It's like brushing against the other terminal of that switch on the back of the pot. Just ridiculous. Just more inexplicable things. You got the center of those pull pot switches linked, and then they only use one terminal of the other one. So I don't know if they had mods in there that they removed or what, but just a lot of this doesn't make any sense at all. Now these pots that they replaced in the EQ, they're actually PCB pots, and you can see there they've barely made any attempt to have a firm connection on there. It's just hanging on by a dendrite of solder. That's pretty standard fare for these modded hack jobs. They just think solder is like super glue, and you can just dab it on there and like Bob Ross style, you know. So this absolute mess around this area, they've pushed this capacitor over to make room for tapping into all these places where previously there were just components. They've just hacked up the circuit completely. You've got all these wires just coming up where there used to be a component, going to all sorts of shit. Just series resistors and stuff everywhere. No idea what the thinking was behind any of this, because it sounds like shit, so it's not like they are magical mods that sound awesome. Got braid just floating around, shorting shit out. Just ridiculous construction techniques, both from Mesa and the modder. So in the process of pushing this cap over, they've pushed this one right over, so now that lead's like trying to short out against a valve pin, which is fun. Just everywhere you look, there's just components added to random places and stuff linking stuff, and little mountains of solder where there should be a fillet. Got multiple leads going into a single pad where there used to be a wire leaving. Man, this is going to take forever to figure out what the hell is supposed to happen. There's an overall view of that messy area. So I think we're just going to have to start cutting and just removing stuff and figuring out what's supposed to go where and rebuilding it up from scratch, which is great considering the documentation from Mesa is utter dog shit. So it's going to have to be a lot of actually thinking, which sucks. Right, so just a look at this messy area. All of these used to be components going from, you know, one pad to another. Now they're all floating in midair with wires disappearing off to fuck knows where. This cap's pushed over. That's pushed this one over, which means that lead no longer from this one no longer passes through the circuit board. It's just glued to the top of the pad. So all of this needs to come out. Some of these caps need to be upgraded anyway because they're only 400 volt when they've got more than 400 volt across them because Mesa. All of this stuff, like you've got big long bits of wire floating around up in midair, just touching against other stuff. You got ground loop galore, which I can just see when I first inspected it. There's just double grounds going everywhere, so that's probably part of the reason for that hum, as well as the caps being a million years old. So I think I'm going to just depopulate this whole area and then build it back up from scratch. In addition to that, I'll be changing out all of the tantalums because they love to go short circuit given the tiniest spike in the power. Just anything we can do to make this thing a bit more reliable and not sound like arse. I'll be removing this voltage divider, getting rid of this wire because we're going to get rid of that extra stage which is feeding off this. And I'm going to re-establish that trace. Might have to run some wires in that area because they've scratched it up off the board. Reinstall that resistor, just going between these two nodes that connects down to there. So this orange wire coming in here, that's actually the third node, the one after the screen. It's normally the one you'd run the reverb driver transformer off. They've got a small resistor feeding that, which is the plate supply for the reverb driver valve via the transformer. But they've also got a carbon comp here touching down to ground. So that's some attempt, I don't know, like pulling, I don't know. All of this is really dumb. We're just wasting brain power trying to think about the idiot who did it all. But that resistor's overheated. You can see it's discoloured. So all of that will come out and we'll return it to stock. So it actually functions, you know. Crazy, I know, right? So essentially they've tapped off all these nodes. They've got a ground over here, which goes twisted on these wires, which have been added by the previous person. I'm not going to say tech. They come over to the Marshall style capacitor over here with the ground there that runs all the way up the other end. However, that's jammed against that tag strip down there anyway, so that's creating a ground loop because there's grounds for the chassis there, and then you've got another wire running all the way up the other end. So fun. So off this node here, they tap into the plate supply for that one additional triode. The other triode's grounded out for whatever the hell this was supposed to be. Now this valve hole looks like it was actually punched from the factory, but left vacant. So I don't know. As I say, there's not much documentation that's reliable on these. I doubt any of this is from the factory, but you can clearly see in the chassis that it is punched. I don't know why you'd put a gain stage right next to the power transformer, like literally an inch away from it. Seems pretty dumb to me, but you know, sometimes you just got to try not to think about this stuff and just remove it and carry on. And just a quick look at the cabinet. Overall, it's in pretty good condition, not too bashed up. Missing the badge there though. Bit of a shame. There's a bunch of stuff rattling around in there. The reverb tank came with no screws securing it, just rocking around. Got this. Oh, there's the badge. Cool. But the funniest part is you've got a plug pack, AC/DC adapter, 120 volt input, 12 volt output. Then they've got one of these connectors, and they've got the highest quality $3 fan there, probably with LEDs, glowy. You've got a broken reverb connector. They're pretty shit anyway, so I'll replace them with some Switchcraft and secure the tank properly. But at least the Tolex and everything is in reasonable condition. The grill cloth on the front. I don't know what these brackets are about. I don't think they're stock. I think that was just to hold the chassis there until you can get a screw in it. So, a bit strange. Handle looks in good nick. Not too much corrosion on anything. All the leather corners are still intact, so that's a plus. You got to take the wins where you can get them, champions. So starting from the left, you got your main selector. Set to 240, that's good. Fuse, have checked the rating of that, and that's correct. Got a ground switch which is disconnected. It looks like it's never been soldered. It's just being used as a terminal point for the mains, which is good. We don't want a ground switch, that's dangerous. The only way a ground lift switch should be implemented is by removing the audio ground from the chassis. If it's done any other way than that, it's not only not compliant, but not safe. Mesa, even on their V-Twin series, the ground switch literally lifted the ground pin from any connection to the amplifier, which is illegal, dangerous, and overall fucking stupid. I've got no idea how they made it into the country. It must have been a grey import, because that would not make it through any certification process in Australia. You got your direct out there. Really well thought out labelling there with the washer covering it and the knob covering the other half. Got the effects loop, presence, and your speaker outputs there. You can see there they had an option for reverb on the back. For some reason on this one it's on the front because it's printed on the front silk screen. So I'm not sure if maybe they changed their mind as to whether it's on the back at some point. I've got no idea as to the history of that decision, but I have seen Mark series amps where the reverb's mounted on the back. They've used black texture over that, but it's faded over time, so I reckon that's probably from the factory. Now everyone keeps asking about these heat sinks. What are they for? Why are they there? The answer is no fucking reason at all. They're there so it looks like a piece of professional equipment. I don't know if they genuinely thought this would aid in like cooling that one little section of the chassis. It does nothing. So I'm not going to argue with anyone about it. It does fuck all. It's there for cosmetics to make it look like a serious piece of equipment when it's kind of not. So it's time to get the side cutters out, get them angry, and I'll take a bunch of photos first and hopefully do some time-lapse video as I'm ripping it apart.